Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Today, my spots 25 to 21 on the top 100 NBA players list are going to be revealed as we do enter this elite end of the list. And with that, we're going to quickly knock off these 5 names. And starting us off today, we have Karl-Anthony Towns from the New York Knicks here at number 25. Cat, really just the epitome of your offensive play finishing juggernaut. He brings that pure play finishing skill set that allows him to provide these surges in shot making off the catch and coming out of action, where he does bring this individual gravity and does provide more open runways for his teammates and initiators. And that's really just the bulk of the off-ball value that you do get from having your 5-man as skilled as Cat is in the first place. Last year, Cat had his best season in the league. He averaged 24 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, on 58% effective field goal percentage, on insane 53, 42, 83 splits, claiming All-NBA third-team honors as well for the 51-win New York Knicks. And just with Cat and everything he accomplished last year, just the gravity is just the bulk part of the value package that you were getting. In terms of the impact of his involvement in action, just Towns with his versatility off the set screen is just so great. You talk about that quick trigger 3, you talk about the pump fake bully drive off the pop. It's just so damaging against those less mobile centers or those undersized closeout defenders that he can come up against. And all this is really opened up with the elite coordination that Towns does bring at his size. We're talking about the stable long strides. We talk about the footwork matched with his very decently built frame as well. It just allows him to combat size with his momentum generation downhill and why he's such a powerful driver, where he's also able to maintain balance and maintain composure for the most part all the way to the rim. And that's what does make him such a dangerous off-the-dribble player as well. Yes, Towns can become quite matchup dependent, and sometimes that offensive package as well can become pretty stale and pretty narrow dimension. But overall, Towns all out is clearly the most overpowered shot-making big in the NBA today. And there is so much regular season value to get from that. Last year, Towns was mainly efficient across the board on all of his shot types. He was 54% on hook shots out of the post, 61% on layups, and 67% in the restricted area, and also shot 46% on catch and shoot threes. And adding to that, in play types, Towns last year, 1.25 points per possession on roll man possessions at 61% effective field goal percentage. And then also on spot-up looks, he was getting the 91st percentile 1.25 points per possession. So simply put, just the spacing is just that damaging and that impactful to your offensive rating throughout an entire 82-game regular season. And though there are many drawbacks, which we will get to in a minute, the total Towns ceiling-raising greatness is so immensely treasured by his teams, especially in the regular season. Limitations, though, Towns, in terms of just the off-the-dribble stuff, not as significantly great. Towns last year was a 50th percentile post-up guy last year and a 41st percentile isolation scorer on decently respectable volume. Now, obviously, Cat provides more of that off-ball value with the shooting piece, and that's what we talked about before. But his drawbacks as a negative passer in traffic and on those on-ball drive situations as well just severely limits his overall impact as an offensive player when he is trying to churn out offensive engine types of looks, when he is trying to get that downhill penetration. And the main reason why he can't be in those offensive fulcrum talks is also just the passing. It's very different to what you get from guys like Sabonis, Alperen Şengün, let alone Nikola Jokic as well. And that's what does disrupt his ability to be that fully on-ball realized player who can affect offense at the highest level, team-based offense that is. And he just can't carry the same offensive duties that other guys can. However, though, in saying the passing obviously does lack, but his actual skill set is so rare and it's so hard to find across the league. And that is why I do value him a little bit higher than some guys like Sabonis and Alperen Şengün. Many 5-men across the league can shoot as well, but there aren't many guys who can impose themselves as an elite shooting talent in the NBA, regardless of position. And that's really what Cat is, just an elite shooter of the basketball. Defensively though, we know where Towns' value is generally tanked. He's pretty useless as a defensive anchor in general, who, especially now when he's positioned as a center, it's just that much more damaging with his lack of instincts, the lack of timing, positioning, attentiveness as well. And in terms of help deterrence, it's pretty minimal impact that you're getting from Towns. The help side frame and the physical tools already aren't super optimal the way they are, but with the effort lapses as well, he just fails to provide the Knicks with an actual help side rim protector in that starting unit. And though much of it isn't his fault, when you are the center of a team and you simply can't provide any sort of requisite anchoring minutes defensively, you just become that much bigger of a liability for your team than even most guards who do struggle to stay in front of bodies as well. It's just more damaging to your team's value. And there are many great players who are defensive liabilities, but those guys that are pitched at the 5 spot are just that much more detrimental, and especially throughout those entire playoffs as well, where it was clear that even a guy like Mitchell Robinson could frequently replace Cat's overall impact comfortably because of the boost that you're getting in defensive physicality, the cognitive strengths. And that's why, though I do believe heavily in Cat's talent and skill set, he just doesn't provide the same overall value as the super high-end guys when it comes to two-way impact. But in saying that, Towns was clearly one of the best players from last season. Just had an absolutely dominant regular season. And then also just helping the Knicks also reach a conference finals berth as the second weapon. And for me, that does deserve respect in itself. And that is why I do have him here in this top 25 range. Now moving on to number 24, I have Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics. One of the best Robins in basketball, and just a brutally talented athlete who weaponizes his physical gifts maybe more than any other small forward in the game today. JB, he's obviously just one of those special talents that sometimes gets hard to rank and evaluate. He has contributed to the absolute best team in basketball over the past few years, and therefore the impact on winning can sometimes get overstated in my opinion. But in saying that, in terms of bringing another relatively efficient physical mismatch attacker to the Boston offense, Jaylen Brown has done an exceptional job at mastering that relatively achievable role for himself. Last year, maybe you consider this a down year, 22.6 rebounds and 5 assists on 52% effective field goal percentage. So basically nothing stunning in terms of the output from your all-star guard, but it's just very credible production that does give him a spot around this list, wherever you guys have him. Now, the reason why I do have JB at this rank, which is pretty high considering his individual production and the overall regression that we saw over the past year, but I think it's pretty clear of JB's decent level of matchup resilience, and that's the biggest thing that I believe in with Jaylen Brown. Actually a pretty underrated playoff riser at this point, where his ability to flex his physical gifts becomes so huge in his production maintenance come playoff time. In his current role, Brown has no doubt perfected the art of physicality as a spot-up attacker and a cross-match hunter. And in terms of just the weight distribution all around, it's just a work of art at this point for Jaylen. He is far from the most skilled wing scorer that you'll get in the league. And over the past year, the actual shot touch has been quite disappointing, especially in the optimal situation he has been with that overpowered Celtics offense. But regardless, Jaylen Brown still just provides consistent value, just with the ability to deliver his powerful body blows and work closer for attainable looks. And in terms of the frame, Jaylen Brown is giving you a 6'6" and lean 223 pounds, where he can barrel his shoulders with ease, cave your chest, elevate with his powerful momentum. And just the actual strength definition, it's just so intimidating. And he just understands how to angle and contort his body coming downhill to offer maximal power, dislodging his defender's balance. And that stuff is absolutely invaluable when you do get to those playoff environments. And out of all players in basketball, just genuinely, I don't think there are many players as gifted with the power flexing techniques as Jaylen Brown. And that does give him a favorable and advantageous trait to lean on in all matchups, especially in a very selective offensive situation like what Boston has been over the past previous seasons. The downsides offensively do start particularly with the efficiency across the board. Last year, JB was only giving you 0.92 points per possession per isolation, and he also just gave you 1.13 points per possession in transition. In pick and roll, just 0.86. And with post-up action really being the only relatively strong suit of his half-court arsenal, and that was really just a 1.06 point per possession, so decent, but not something elite. And so with the major drop in overall half-court execution, just Brown's value as this physically gifted scoring force does get severely diminished. And adding to that as well, I mean, he just shot 29% on pull-up threes last year and just 34% on open to wide open threes. So just the offensive touch is just far from desired from someone of his caliber, as of what we saw from last season. Though one thing I do want to quickly reiterate here is that I don't believe that these do deter any of his portable value as a basketball player. And it doesn't do it too significantly, just mainly because of the off-ball activity that Jaylen does bring in transition, in screen actions, as a cutter, and just setting himself up in the post. So that type of portable value is still there, and that's why I do still have him in this kind of section, despite the off-ball gravity not being too significant. In terms of the passing though, just another knock on the entire offensive arsenal. It has certainly improved majorly over the past few years, but we haven't seen this specific flaw be exposed in quite some time for JB, especially because he has proven that he can shadow these aspects by approaching his role with a more decisive mindset, just attacking as fast as possible off the catch, just upholding a high-pace offensive flow. But with the major reduction in talent and gravity on this Boston roster, it'll be so interesting to just see how Brown can impact the game with more of a surgical mindset. Now defensively, we're going to move on here, is where he really just upholds a lot of that physical value again. I actually think JB gets underrated sometimes defensively, just in terms of the talent itself. There aren't many better on-ball point of attack defenders in the league than Jaylen Brown when he is engaged in a playoff environment. Jaylen just brings that superior strength combat, just extraordinarily balanced footwork, and extremely coordinated lateral matching technique to halt driving advantages from premier stars in the league. Now, the consistency and impact when converting this to off-ball defensive side of things is where he does lose some credibility here, but no doubt is Jaylen Brown still a major plus to have on your roster. He is just so capable as an athlete who can be tasked with peel switching, with swapping assignments mid-action, and halting those physical bigs in their drive and post-game as well, like we saw against the Knicks in multiple stretches. And just with the relatively sustainable overall game that Jaylen brings, where he does provide very decent value on the margins, I mean, Brown to me just poses himself still as a versatile star who has multiple avenues where he can leak value for a team, proving to be one of the strongest ceiling raisers in the NBA over the past few years. Now, number 23, we have rising superstar talent and franchise-leading point guard Cade Cunningham, who lands here after what was a pretty incredible floor-raising campaign in his fourth year. He just carried the Pistons to a playoff seed. He averaged 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists on 52% effective field goal percentage, with a very playoff-like style of offensive initiation, and that is really where the intrigue starts with Cade. In terms of the individual campaign, that really is the big part of why Cade does rank here. Talking about 7th in MVP voting, we're talking about an All-NBA third-team selection, and we're talking about a guard who was top 10 in both points per game and assists per game. Just all tremendous marks for a 23-year-old who still isn't in a great situation by any means. But despite the production, obviously that is the biggest thing that does capture the eyes of casual fans. There are still major flaws in Cade's impact when we are ranking him on the scale with the absolute best guys in the NBA. And that is why, for the time being, just evaluating the Cade as of now, he just can't be higher just yet. Now, to start off with Cade's overall package, just the physical tools that Cade was able to weaponize so nicely. They were just so huge into that consistent shot hunting that we saw all throughout last year and throughout into that playoff series against the Knicks. Last year, Cade took the second most pick and rolls per game and got a very respectable 0.93 points per possession. And much of this work was with the composure and the ability to tread against back pressure with his body protection. Just the coordinated balance on his live dribble at his size is already just a super high talent marker. But just the resilient base frame as well that he gives you at 220 pounds, that just gives him the barrier to work methodically downhill under his own pacing, which is a gift of the great initiators in our league, like guys like Luka Doncic most particularly. And really just some guys, you can just tell just have that tempo control in their identity. And Cade, I mean, no doubt exhibited that all throughout his career so far. I mean, talk about the pace and direction variance. It's always on display when he is coming downhill above the break in pick and roll. And he also has had a pretty relatively nimble and agile frame already so far in his career. And that does enable him to be able to carve out more favorable angles at the rim against bulkier wing defenders as well. And then when you have the passing talent as well, that just unfolds itself. We're talking about an extremely patient and composed guard who can match all of those traits with the over-the-top vision as well. I mean, that's just such a powerful combination for Cade when he is exerting that downhill pressure. And it's really just the volume of advantages that he created last year, which is the strong signal for the future talent that he does pose as a lead franchise cornerstone. Cade last year bolstered nearly 50 points per game for Detroit. That is insane value that you are getting from the load-carrying standpoint of things. Yes, Cade is still inefficient in many areas, particularly overall in terms of like the ball security part, where he can struggle with the urgency of making strong and fast deliberate reads as the engine. Sometimes he can fall quite complacent where he does start to make those lazy and very casual passes that do easily get picked off and predicted. But with Cade, most of what people are looking for is the actual talent and potential. And that's why people do have him already near these top 15 conversations. I'm holding off a little bit now because I'm still waiting for him to fully carve out and refine these sort of weaknesses that are still pretty prevalent in his game. But when you are evaluating the offense itself, when your oversized guard is taking 35% of his looks in that paint non-restricted section, just specifically, I mean, you generally just have so much trust in that ability to manage the playoff environment, especially when you are making 50% of those close range looks. Just an absolutely elite mark for the absurd volume that he's taking around that short to mid-range area of the floor. And just that soft touch base as well, it's just extremely encouraging and already decently established in that favored intermediate section of the floor. But really now it's just up to polishing all throughout the arsenal that he already has pretty embedded throughout his basketball identity. I mean, 51% on layups, it's a far from efficient mark. He's only 57% in that restricted area, which is pretty poor. He's only 34% on pull-up threes as well. That does need a pretty big boost before we can throw Cade into these elite superstar level conversations. Defensively though, he's more of a Swiss Army knife build and prospect. He's a guy that does bring a pretty decent motor considering the offensive workload and really just poses more of just that versatile piece who can be tasked credibly in a switching environment, and that does uphold a lot of the overall value. Like you're not losing value defensively with your overexerted offensive engine, which is an extremely rare thing to find. And it really just is this neutral to plus defensive impact that he brings that is just such a strong component in his aggregate value as a basketball player and franchise leader especially. I mean, just when engaged, he does provide strong tendencies to invade airspace using his decent frame to make guys uncomfortable, and that was on display frequently throughout that playoff series against the New York Knicks. And though not very disruptive by any standpoint, I mean, his ability to actually offer switching possessions on the perimeter, it's just a decent luxury when comparing him to most of those high-dose offensive initiators in the league, like your Trae Young, like your Luka Doncic, like your James Hardens, who do struggle offering that requisite defensive value on the perimeter. Obviously, Cade certainly isn't falling behind the curve in this aspect, which again for Detroit is so convincing for their future. That's what you want from your franchise leader, to be able to give you extreme motor and extreme effort on both ends of the floor, and that's what is encouraging as they try to develop more of that gritty identity like they tried to force last year. And with Cade, really, there's just so much good to mention with him. I just can't put him in that top 20 value just yet. Just the superpower that he brings to the game still needs to be revealed and flexed dramatically. And just the playoff series that we just saw, I mean, it did unveil a lot of drawbacks to his style of creation, whilst his shot and passing polish also remain pretty raw to the degree of superstar offensive players in basketball. But with everything that he has established and the incredible season that he put on last season, I still have him here at number 23. Now, number 22, probably more of a controversial take here. I have one of the most injury-prone guys in the league, and that is Zion Williamson. Now, before I get into his breakdown, I just wanted to quickly mention that a big factor in me taking Zion over other injury-prone stars like Joel Embiid is really stemming from the fact that I believe this guy has a higher chance at being healthy throughout a regular season at least, which at this point with Embiid's age and overall size is a low odd. And that's where my main deciphering point is between these injury-prone guys. Now, obviously, a drawback is the conditioning and the health concerns. But to me, when Zion is healthy, we're watching a top 15 player in basketball, which from last year, I couldn't come close to saying for Joel. Just Zion in his part, just super destructive as a rim pressuring force. Just maybe the best in the league at generating literal power and momentum. He comes in at 6'6" and 284 pounds, which brings both positives and negatives. But when we're talking about a healthy Zion, it just adds to the juggernaut impact that he brings downhill. Just the athleticism is just the other piece that and also enables him to impose this all-time driving power. We're talking about speed, we're talking about elevation, we're talking about body contortion with this huge frame, and that's just something we've never seen before. No one at his weight really should be able to hit the jets, not just in transition, but from a pit stop in the half court like what Zion can. It's just so unfair, and just being just a physical anomaly just has helped him as an off-ball rim diver as well. It helps out when he is trying to be that post-up machine and all-out point-forward prospect in the NBA, and there's just so much intrigue to love about someone who actually can't be denied with his superpower of generating rim pressure. Last year, Zion in 30 games averaged 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists on 57% effective field goal percentage, and just gave us more of a glimpse of the all-time great momentum-generating force that he is. And what makes Williamson just that much more destructive is that there really is no wing that can really contain that power in isolation. But then also, if you're flipping to bigs, he just presents way too fast for those bigs who find it extremely hard, not just absorbing the extra runway power that he does get, but it's also becomes so hard when you're trying to decipher what chosen finishing angles he is trying to attain at the rim. And it's not just the chest power that he brings, but it's also just the lower base explosiveness and the forearm strength to just shove aside guys on his attacks. And that's what makes him a pure juggernaut of power. And just with the point forward skills as well that he brings along, he just becomes that much more terrifying as an offensive prospect. We're talking about extreme passing forward traits. He's that destructive of an advantage creator, and that just plays into the distribution abilities with those powerful kickouts midair, that really good court mapping as well for his position as well. He's always cognitively unlocked. And the handle as well. Not anything amazing, but not anything amazing for a lead creator, but just matched with the size that he brings, just the coordination just helps out enough here where he is a very decent ball handler. And obviously the skill development outside of the driving pressure is severely limited, but just that superpower is just so clear and undoubted, and that weights greatly for me, and that's why I do have him up here so high at number 22. But obviously Zion, outside of the paint, basically a zero as a threat. And that's really where the drawbacks do start. In the past 3 years, Zion has attempted 53s and still doesn't even think of them as an avenue, which to be honest is a decent trait that does uphold the efficient mindset. However, the shot touch itself does need refinement, because the fact that he doesn't even take decent length mid-range shots just totally diminishes the gravity that he can bring as a perimeter ball handler. And despite being destructive at getting downhill, just the overall degree of difficulty of his looks at the rim does tend to be quite high due to the extra efforts that teams put directly at the rim for him, just with the lack of external threats that he does bring to the game. He can't settle for mid-range jumpers. He actually just only can get to the rim. And that is where defenses can take a bit of a lazier approach, where they can confine the space around there. And that really is just a big part why he isn't posting super high level efficiency marks at the rim and on layups just yet. But if he can unlock any sort of a pull-up mid-range game like we've seen from Giannis in the past few years, this guy is going to become that much more terrifying and just purely unstoppable at what he does best. Defensively as well, Zion just doesn't really offer much value at halting shot hunting. Just a lack of keyed-in aggression and lateral concentration that just deters the athletic size that he does bring. Zion just lacks the actual IQ and effort side of things. He frequently loses his positioning on matchups, occasionally as well just misunderstanding switches and rotations, and he fails to make second efforts on so many plays, and he just doesn't have the backline traits due to the lack of size and understanding of positioning. Though that specific role in the near future, probably something that is relatively achievable for him. Think about Aaron Gordon as well, especially with the elevation and the strength absorption that he can bring to the game. But the thing with Zion is that we just haven't seen him in a playoff environment just yet. So we just don't know how great he can be in a high-stakes setting. But for the actual play style and like the skill set and the physical imposition that you're getting, I mean, I just have full faith that a healthy Zion would be just so instrumentally great as a playoff performer, just because of that matchup resilient feel that he brings. And for that reason, I do have Zion Williamson still here at number 22 amongst these greats, despite all the injury concerns. Now, number 21 is the last guy, obviously, for today's section, and that is Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies, who recently just got paid 5 years and $240 million after a career year in Memphis, averaging 22.6 rebounds and nearly 3 stocks per game on a pretty efficient 55% effective field goal percentage. Now, starting with Jaren, again, there are still a fair load of holes in his overall game, but in terms of the half-court offense, I think that's really where Triple J has certainly bolstered himself into these discussions. Last year, Jaren was getting you 1.06 points per possession per post-up. That was his best mark since 2021. On spot-up looks, he was getting you 1.09 points per possession, and that really just was how strong he was attacking closeouts and as a drive and attack scoring force. And coming out of your guy who does switch between the 4 and the 5, that is pretty decent production overall. And with this newfound off-the-dribble efficiency as well for Jaren, he has now made himself one of the most threatening bigs in basketball, just now fully weaponizing the offensive frame to its capabilities, just with the strength and the foot speed mix that does make him a powerful machine of driving value. As we spoke about with Jaylen Brown with the physical IQ, Jaren Jackson just matches this offensively, but in a 6'10 and 242-pound frame itself. And with it, he distributes significantly more momentum, just understanding how to leverage that strength and bully players for primed positioning for those attainable looks close to the rim. And in terms of the efficiency piece as well, Jaren is certainly up there with the best from this zone. Last year, he was 51% in that paint non-restricted section. He was 47% from the mid-range, and he shot a very credible 64% within the restricted area. And then when you do also add in the spacing traits as well, you just have such a special basketball player that is Triple J. I mean, he made 38% of his threes on over 5 attempts per game at that 4-man spot with that unorthodox jumper. And with this, I mean, you just get this rare combination of reliable on and off the ball offensive juice where his value in actions is relatively diverse as well. And though obviously he does have pretty poor vision and ball handling insecurities as well that do deprive him of more opportunities initiating actions to a greater volume, Jaren still has room to mature with that decision making. Obviously inverted actions as well, something that could be more of a viable option in the future if this stuff does get sharpened up. But that's really where the bulk of the drawbacks start with Jaren. The scoring piece is pretty complete at this point. He's just legitimately a terrible passer who does struggle moving the ball cross-court and making safe decisions with deliberate intent. Now, the passing out of doubles and the passing out of help, that's really where the poor aspects start. By any standards, I mean, he does struggle to have continuous spatial awareness. He struggles to have that sufficient court mapping as well in his cognitive load, and that's really where he is limited in terms of the on-ball ceiling and why he can't be a top-tier offensive fulcrum in the NBA just yet. Last season, though, Jaren was absolutely terrific with the physical imposition side of things, and besides a really poor playoff series versus maybe the greatest defense of the modern era, Jaren had an absolutely incredible season. Last year, I think he should have made All-NBA. He did get his All-Star nod. He got his All-Defensive selection, which both do add to his already established NBA resume. But his season was more than impactful, than just those sheer accolades do already claim. In his first 58 games last season, before the first ankle injury that he suffered, And especially before the Taylor Jenkins firing as well, and the system shift as well that the Grizzlies experienced towards that March-April section of the season, Jaren was averaging 23, 6, and 2 in that first 58-game portion. He was also the leader of a top 3 seed in the West, especially when Ja was completely inconsistent in terms of the absence. And for that bulk period of the season, that 58-game stretch leading a top 3 seed in the most intense conference that we've seen in years, Triple J deserves major honors by my standards. And then also, I mean, we're flipping to defensively as well, and that's really where the value really starts to skyrocket for him as well. You're getting incredible rim protection, just full stop. Though people do have major doubts about the rebounding concerns, just in terms of the actual rim deterrence, Jaren is up there as a very high level rim protector. It does start with the physical absorption for Triple J. You got the massive frame. You talk about that ability to absorb and mitigate momentum. Just certainly a strong suit for him. And when he is playing that secondary big, especially when he is pitched next to Zach Edey, that's when he's able to roam around and disturb looks at the rim, especially when he is making up for the slow-footed Zach Edey, who can be vulnerable when he is pulled into action. But also adding to that, it's not just the rim protection that he brings, it's the switchability and just another factor in his defensive game as well. Just not incredible, but certainly valuable considering his role and strengths. Just the instincts that he can actually cut off angles and cover lanes with his wide lateral stance. That is a strong suit. Jaren has a 7'5" wingspan and is able to staunch vision quite well for frequent possessions. And for a major volume defensive load guys as well, like in terms of just the overall defensive impact that he's bringing you, Jaren ranks second in differential percentage on defended looks at negative 6.1%. And last year as well, he ranked fourth amongst high volume contesters within 6 feet at negative 13.8%, which is for players who have contested a minimum of 200 rim contests last year. And so it's just the aggregate regular season value, that's the high point for him. And that plays into the load of aggregate impact of Jaren's playstyle and just the skill set and frame that he does bring to a team. And just with the versatility of the offense, with the growth as a reliable penetration big, Triple J for me just gets the nod here. Just this high at number 21, even though he does have so much room to grow, after just an incredible season though, I think he's one of the most versatile big men in the NBA today. And with Jaren, obviously, we now knock onto the doorstep of our top 20 guys in the league. We'll be getting to these guys fairly soon. Again, 5 at a time as we do scope in on the premier talents of our league. Just all-NBA and all-star caliber guys who are just a toe off that superstar level tier. They will be coming up just next. I thank you guys for tuning in here, and I'll be back with some more rankings and predictions very soon.